Hello and welcome to this week's episode of ECC Essentials. Thank you for joining us. As you may know, every other Thursday, 3 Eastern, 2 Central, we meet here for a new episode. Really looking forward to today's. If you are a new director or about to be a director or taking a leadership position, I'm really looking forward to what Cammie has to say about her experience in the past year. As always, feel free to jump in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. I am Halcyon with the Denise Amberlee Foundation. If you are not familiar, please feel free to reach out with any questions about the foundation as well. We do have Cammie Haney here out of Oregon, and I'm going to pass it over to her to introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Cammie Haney. I work at the Grant County 911 Center in Eastern Oregon. I've been dispatching for just over 17 years now, and I just finished my first year as director, and hopefully many more to come.
You survived, and that's what's important. So we will go ahead. These ECC Essentials are made to be short, easy sessions to get some good information out of. So I don't want to take up any more time because I know you have some good stuff to share with us. So I will pass it back over to you. For those in the chat, feel free to pop in with any questions you have as we go through as well, so we can answer those. You can put them in the chat or use that Q&A feature, whichever's easiest. So I'll let you take it away. Still muted, I think. We'll figure this out, guys. There we go.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about kind of what my expectations were coming into the director's position, what actually happened, and kind of some things that I learned along the way that I wish that I knew or I had thought of ahead of time. So this is kind of what I was anticipating. And it's very admin driven. So I was expecting death by paperwork. I was expecting death by meetings because it seemed like every time the previous director was leaving, she was headed to a meeting, or anytime she came back in the evening, she was coming for a meeting. I was expecting some scheduling woes, some scheduling issues, mostly because just like everywhere else, we're always short-staffed, and it's hard to schedule people when you don't have people to schedule and fill in spots. I anticipated some daily fire extinguishing coming in the beginning of every shift, seeing what's in the inbox, what happened the shift before, any little fires that may need to be put out. And also I was really looking forward to making small changes as I needed or wanted, just some fine-tuning improvements. And I did not want to do anything big or drastic right out of the chute. So that's kind of what I anticipated. I knew I'd have to work the console occasionally too, especially with how shorthanded we already were. But the reality of this situation is that I walked into something that looked very much like this. This is what my sister would call a hot mess express. Looks like it should be a fun time, but it is not. But that's really how it felt coming into the position. Not fun.
It doesn't look like it.
No. So the reality of the situation, what really happened. So within the first month, or right after the first month about, we went down to 3 dispatchers. When I say 3 dispatchers, I don't mean myself and 3 dispatchers, I mean myself and 2 others. There were 3 of us left and trying to maintain 24-hour coverage. So one of my very first goals was to try and schedule in a way that I was not going to be burnt out and they were not going to be burnt out. My other concern was how to keep morale from tanking, because this was a big hit. I knew people were going to be working a lot, and just the emotional stress of something like this happening was a big concern for me. during that time period, we were finding people to hire, but some of them were not making it through the training process. So when I mathed it out the other day, the other trainer and I have been training nonstop since about the spring of 21. So we were we were
A
really
little
tired.
tired.
Yeah. So that was pretty exhausting. And I was also trying to, while I'm working the console doing dispatching and call taking, I'm trying to act as an FTO and ensure that my trainees get, what they need to be successful, while also trying to do my admin work at the console, constantly being interrupted. And that was very difficult, very, very difficult. We had a phone refresh, a phone upgrade coming up that I had never done or dealt with before. I was correct. There were lots of meetings. I was also correct. There was lots of paperwork. So I at least had something right. Um, and while doing all of this, I was also trying to take care of myself and my basic needs, and also trying to maintain a healthy work home life balance with spending time with my husband and being able to take care of my daughter that has some pretty significant special needs. So unfortunately, I was trying to give 100% of myself at work and trying to give 100% of myself at home.
What did that look like for you as far as then scheduling that? I feel like that's always a question I see in forums. Like, we have 8 people. How do you guys schedule if you're at a similar size? So just out of
Yeah,
curiosity, like what did that look like schedule
right.
wise?
Yeah. So what we did is that I worked 4 days. The other dispatcher worked 4 nights and 12-hour shifts. So I worked 4 12-hour days. She worked 4 12-hour nights. And then the other dispatcher basically filled the other shifts with 2 day shifts, 2 night shifts. And I kind of made the decision early on that there was no way I could leave that employee on that shift, because that is just terrible. And yeah. So I decided that I was actually going to take that shift the following month, so that he didn't get stuck on it.
Richard in the chat says, feels good to know that I wasn't alone in that boat. I can relate to 100%. So
Yay.
I guess there's at least people then. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing that you're both in the same boat, but sometimes it's encouraging to know that you're not the only one
Very
facing
much
those
so.
things.
Very much so.
So you at least got that going for you.
Yeah. Um, so moving on to kind of some things that I learned. Some I kind of already knew, but I didn't realize how important they were until I jumped into the middle of this nice little fiasco. The first thing was to build your support system early. Um, so I thankfully, I had decided probably 10 years ago I wanted to work really hard to be the next director. And one of the things that I did, and the best things I did, was to work to build really strong, genuine relationships with the other agencies that we serve, with community partners, with people within my center, because everything revolves around relationships. And I was in a position where there was absolutely no way that I was going to be able to do this on my own. It just was not, it wasn't going to be possible. So for me, I was very fortunate that I had the previous director still around in the area to ask questions. The other department heads, the sheriff, the EMS director, emergency manager, some of them are just my best friends that I've known forever. And that was phenomenal to have them. Um, I was glad for that comment from Richard, and I see one from Shelby too. Networking with other directors was huge for me. So there was actually 3 other directors in adjoining counties, or center supervisors, that kind of came into the position the same time I did, with the same kind of thing going on, down to half staff and trying to figure things out. And so even though it was sad that we were all kind of doing the same thing, it was very nice to have that support and someone that could understand where I was coming from. My gal in finance, because I had never dealt with a big budget before, and she is just so patient and amazing. Legal, oh my Lanta, legal. That's not something you want to try and wing. So if you don't
Very
know,
true.
yeah, if you don't know, lead hard on that. Mental health, I can't say enough about mental health. So I thankfully have an amazing therapist that I can reach out to and that I have for years. And it's so nice to just be able to pour everything onto someone else who's completely neutral and get very good insight into how I can deal and handle some of the situations I'm facing. Once I finally got a lead dispatcher, having someone I could delegate to and that was willing to dive into our SOP and update some stuff, who was willing to fully take on the training program, that's just very capable and just strong dispatcher, um, was huge. And then obviously my friends and family.
Was your lead dispatcher, was that somebody that was there that you were able to develop, or was it somebody who came
Yes.
in?
Yep. She was someone who's been with the agency. She was here once for several years. She left and then she came back, and she is just a phenomenal dispatcher. She's very organized. She's just a great all around person, and she's very detail oriented. And was just one of those wonderful people that I could be like, I don't have room on my plate for this right now. So will you please do this? And I mean, she'd run with it and go. So that was a huge relief for me.
That's awesome to have that, because
Yes.
yeah, that's a huge thing when you at least have, others that you can work with and trust to take out some of that burden.
Yes, absolutely. And then one quote that I wanted to share, and this came from one of my best friends and biggest supporters, and it wasn't said like negatively. It wasn't meant to be like a warning necessarily. It was just something very insightful and good advice. Be careful who you talk to and what you talk to them about, including myself. Um, that seemed like kind of an odd piece of advice when I first heard it, but then once I started thinking about it, each person in your support system has a certain role, and not everybody needs to know everything. So I don't need to have the conversation about finances or legal with the previous admin or the other department heads. I don't There's certain things I don't want to go home and dump on my family at the end of the day. So it really was a good piece of advice that I've held on to and tried to be very mindful of as I've navigated this last year.
I know we also have talked before, and what I loved about it was we had talked about the dynamic between going from a coworker to being like the leader, manager, supervisor, whatever that is, to having
Yeah.
a title. And that also applied to of how you have to change your approach and how you're talking with people.
Yes.
And that quote also pertains to them too.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed. There is a shift that happens in relationships and a dynamic that's a little different. And it's an adjustment. Thankfully, mine was not that difficult. I had already tried to be kind of like a natural leader and cheerleader. Like I liked to organize the potlucks. I'd like to do like little cards for people. I like to. So that was just something I was kind of naturally drawn to. So, and I felt like I had a lot of support from the people around me. So I feel like compared to what a lot of other people have maybe had in their experience, mine was pretty easy. I had a lot of support, which was appreciated.
That's fantastic, because sometimes
Yeah.
that's the big missing piece is the support.
Yes. Yeah. Um, so the next thing was employee appreciation. So I titled that Employee Appreciation More Than Pizza Parties because anybody who's been part of any dispatch forum will let you know that a lot of dispatchers feel that dispatch admin feels like they can solve anything or show appreciation with a pizza. And pizza is wonderful, it has its place, but that's not always the best way or the only way to express appreciation. um, so like my first word of advice would be to know your people, know how your people like to be praised. Do they like public praise? Do they just like something quiet? What kind of things do they appreciate? Um, in my experience, number two here, it's just true, money talks. So my employees that were working tons of hours, were they making overtime? Yeah, but that was money that they were entitled to. It wasn't anything that really gave them, I felt like, thanks or acknowledgement for what they did. The two that were left over, I arranged for them to have loyalty bonuses for staying with the agency and helping. And I know that they really appreciated that. And it wasn't just about giving them money to say, hey, good job, you're working a lot, here's some more money. It was more about, thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for working so hard. We want to acknowledge you. We want to see you. And as a way to kind of, let them know that we understand this is a struggle. I mean, overtime doesn't compensate for like the emotional and mental hardship of what's going on. Um, with that said, make sure that your appreciation is personal and genuine. So in addition to this, what I did is I made sure I wrote them each a personal letter, letting them know how much I appreciated all of their hard work they were doing at the time. And if you look on the slide, there's a picture of a badge there. Um, the patch says, "The strongest steel is forged in the fire of a dumpster," which felt very accurate for what we were dealing with at the time. And so I made sure I bought each one of them one of those as well. And so that's what they received with the bonus. And it was just a way to kind of keep things light and just realize that it's going to be okay. We're in something kind of terrible, but we're going to be okay. Another thing that I did is that once we got down shorthanded and I realized we were going to be working so much, I kind of panicked and I didn't know what to do. And so I thought, if they're going to be here, let's feed them. Like, I was like, I can solve this with some snacks, right? So since I wasn't in my office, I just put in a Costco order and just made the corner of my office a pantry so that there were snacks whenever. Um, the other thing about appreciation and praise is make sure it's continuous. It's not a one and done thing. So still to this day, I'll leave my dispatchers a note if they did something well. I'll send them an email if I saw something that I liked that they did. On larger scale things where they maybe handled like a really, significant call, I don't just email them about it. I make sure to CC the intergovernmental council that's over our center and the 911 user board, because those dispatchers deserve to be acknowledged for the good and the hard work they do. And I feel like letting the people know that we serve what a good center we have and good dispatchers we have is really important.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic and always goes like a little further when it goes outside the center.
Yes.
And like with the snacks and the money, I think that's sometimes what people miss too is money talks. But like you said, it's not just the money, it's not
Right.
just the snacks. A lot of times they put the pizza party because they think that's what they'll solve, but it's not just about that. It's you have to have the meaning behind it. Like
Yes.
I'll take any of those things if I know that they're delivered to me with the message of, I so appreciate what you did or what you do, or, what the message is.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. And that's what it was like, just making sure that they were taken care of and making sure they knew that I genuinely cared and was thinking about them.
Yeah. And like for the snacks, I think it's not about the snacks, right? It's about the fact that I recognize you're working so much that I don't want you to have to worry about, oh, I need to pack enough food for 12 hours because we eat our lunch, by hour 2. So we have to make sure we have enough for the rest of the shift.
That's so accurate.
It's the fact that you like thought ahead for them. Like, okay, here's one thing that we don't have to stress about now because there's snacks, there's food. If you forget something, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and I mean, especially living in a smaller community, so we're very rural out here. The town that we're in has like 1,700 people, one stoplight in the county, and streets roll up at like 9 p.m. So there's no ordering anything in. Like there's not even that option. So trying to make sure that we had things available because there weren't any other options, I felt was important.
Yeah, definitely. That's the center I'm still in is very similar to that. Like it's Pizza Hut or it's Pizza Hut. So it makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. So the next thing that I felt was very, very important was, and I think this was one of your favorites. If you don't know something or if you need help, ask.
I
And
love
then I have your little quote there. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well. I was in a lot of situations, especially with the phone refresh and just stuff with the state and, policy, stuff, or, any number of things where I'm just like, some of this stuff I maybe learned a couple of times, but I had no idea, like on some things, like what was even happening. And I got to a point where I was like, I'm not even going to be bashful. I'm just going to. So when people would start talking or explaining something to me, I'd say, I'm sorry. I've only been doing this 3 months. I really am having a hard time understanding this. Can you just talk to me like I'm 5 or like I don't know anything? Because that's really where we are at this point. And this kind of position, and really, a lot of what we do in general, you can't fake it till you make it. That's how you're going to get in trouble, and that's how you're going to sink. You can't just pretend like and sail along and think that everything's going to be okay. You have to ask, you have to reach out if you need help. And if you need clarification, get it. Absolutely get it.
Yeah. I mean, beyond even the like we deal with life or death, like there's laws governing how we do things. It's really not the position to be like, I'm just gonna, test things out, pretend that I know what I'm doing and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think it can be easy to get in a management or an admin position and feel like there's so much resting on you, or there's such an expectation for you to just know and to be able to do these things. But really, it's about having humility and understanding that you are going to struggle and you aren't going to do things perfectly and you are going to fail. And you need to be able to reach out for help on these things that might come up. Don't try to push your way through it by yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's where we get into trouble too, is we try to act like we know and then we don't and we get into trouble. But then the other part of it is I feel like there's always going to kind of be like the haters who will test you and push you, and maybe not in your center specifically.
Yeah, no, we're good.
But they're going to like try to test you. But that's that's a them problem, right?
Yes.
Majority of people are going to be far more comfortable if you're willing to just admit, you know what, I'm not sure. I need to find that out. That's a great question. I think sometimes people get hung up on that because there will be people who challenge them or act like they need to know everything. But it's really more of a that person problem. And I think they're in all reality the minority. Like the majority wants you to just admit, I'm not sure. I'm going to find out. Versus, the other people who are just going to expect that. But we have some good discussion. So in the chat, Brad said, there are times I feel lost now. I feel like I should know the answers because I held an admin position several years ago, but so much change over that 10 years that I was not in admin. 10 years, yeah, a lot has changed. And,
a lot.
And did you, so when you were coming into this position, because you had then 16 years on?
Yeah.
I'm sure that played into it too. I mean, were there times where you thought, I've been doing this for 16 years. Why don't I know this?
I think that there were, and I think especially like I went in, I wouldn't say that like I was cocky or arrogant about it, but like, man, I had worked hard. Like you want to talk about like I got my RPL, I studied leadership, I studied communication, I studied like emotional intelligence, just like anything I could that would help me. I was like, I got this, I'm going to do this and I'm going to work hard. And then I get in there, I'm like, I was not prepared for 3 employees. I was not prepared for, all of this crazy work at the console. There was so much that I was not prepared for. So I did have some of that. Wow, I've been doing this for 16 years. I need to know my stuff. But I was also very aware that this is different than anything that I've done before. And I knew it was going to be an adjustment going from just being primarily a dispatcher to a completely different capacity.
Which is good too, because that's, I think on the flip side, what people run into in centers is they promote someone because they're a good dispatcher, thinking they'll be a good leader, and don't recognize or emphasize that they are. They're two different positions. It's two different skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely makes a difference.
Makes a huge difference.
Richard said 10 months in and had no one to train from. It's been a rather unique situation here as all the administration is new and had no one to learn from. I'm still
Wow.
finding out new and exciting things that I'm responsible for. I can imagine that. Yeah.
My sheriff gave, or my undersheriff gave me a great piece of advice years ago. It's like anything's okay as long as you say surprise afterwards.
I like to
Sometimes it
say,
works, sometimes it doesn't. Try it. It at least makes you feel better occasionally.
I go with plot twist.
Right?
Plot twist.
Right. Yeah, very much so. Um, so my last thought is probably the most important, and why I saved it for the end rather than putting it at the beginning, is to take care of yourself. And I always feel, man, hypocritical on this because I in our center, like, we talk about mental health and therapy and all of that stuff very openly. Constant, like, hey, check-ins, you need to debrief on stuff. I'm sure my employees just get tired of me checking in with them all the time on everything, but whatever, they can deal with that. I care. But so there's a list of things here, and this list, I thought of it for a specific reason. So to be completely open and transparent, I tried throughout this year really, really hard to be, I'm just going to say, the unicorn director. Like, I just wanted to do everything well. I just wanted to take care of everything. I just wanted to excel and succeed. And I really was pouring probably too much into what I was doing. And I kept telling people I felt like I was treading water. I'm treading water. Well, you can only tread water so much before you drown. People that tread drown. So I had woke up in the middle of the night, probably right before my 1 year mark, and something was just off or wrong. Like, the room was kind of spinning. I felt like my limbs were heavy. I was numb in my face and numb in my hands, and I had rushing in my ears. And all I could tell my husband was like, something's wrong. Like, I didn't know how to say something was wrong because everything felt wrong, but I was like, something's not wrong or something's not right. So I end up going to, or calling the clinic to go in and get checked. And they're like, yeah, you got to go to the ER. So I was very annoyed. It's like typical dispatcher. We're going to downplay this. It's not really bad. I mean, I can't hear anything and I'm numb, but it's okay. So I go to the
Rub
ER,
some dirt on it. You'll be fine.
right? Just wipe it off with some spit.
Yeah.
So I get checked into the ER and I'm sitting on the bed and I'm thoroughly annoyed because it's a Monday morning. And so I'm like going through my email on my phone. I'm texting people that I'm going to be late. I'm just like, I'm trying to tie up all these loose ends. And then the next thing I know, like, the doctor's like, no, you got to do a CT, and we're going to do an EKG, and we're going to run a huge blood panel, and then we're going to do some other tests as well. And I was like, oh, there's a problem. Like, what is happening? So after sitting there for quite some time, it turned out that I had had some sort of panic attack I had never had before. And they're like, we're going to give you a muscle relaxer because you're very tense and you're super dehydrated and probably not eating enough. So I legit went to the ER because I was stressed. Is what it boiled down to. So like a bag and a half fluid later, they send me home.
I just like how you're like potentially dying and you're like, I'm thoroughly annoyed that my body had the audacity to have a panic attack. Like, how dare it?
I know. And the fact that I'm laughing, because it's not funny, like, it's really not, but I'm like, what are you going to do? So what came of that was this list over here, was to boundaries. Don't overcommit, don't overgive. It is so easy to want to do so well and help so much, but you really have to have boundaries. I was staying at work way too long, way too long. And some people I love started calling me out on it or sending me texts like, hey, why are you there? And I didn't have a good answer. The other thing, basics. First big one there, hydrate. Hydrate, eat, sleep, physical activity. I used physical activity because I hate the word workout. So just go do something. Rest, disconnect, unplug, be unavailable. So no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so it came up, I don't remember when it came up, but we kind of talked about, I think we were talking about about like complacency and like with new people, right? Like they get so used
Yeah.
to leaning on a trainer, they don't know how to do it on their own. So sometimes I think when we're in a position where people are depending on us, we almost train them to depend on us.
Yes.
So my personal recommendation too, and I feel like we're on the same page with this, would be unplug, but really unplug, because if you're always available, they will always use you.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I actually our emergency manager is someone who's also managed a dispatch center before. So before I had a lead, one of my mental health people said, find someone that can take call for a little bit, just, just sometimes so you can shut your phone off. And so I reached out to him and it was like, yeah, take a day, take a couple of days. And I'm like, let's start with a few hours. Let's work up to this. But it was phenomenal to have that. And then to have a lead dispatcher where I could kind of share some of that burden where, she can take call occasionally. And then what I ended up doing was spending a lot of time like trying to get out of cell service in the mountains to where I legit no one could get a hold of me. Um, so yeah, disconnect, unplug, and be unavailable. Know your burnout and danger signs. So this was an interesting thing for me because it kind of changed. So as a dispatcher, I was very in tune to when I was hitting burnout because everyone around me was super annoying and being stupid and irritating me. And they were just really annoying and I couldn't stand them. Then I would sit back and be like, what's the common denominator? Everyone else? Probably not. But when I got in this position, I was on such a survival mode that I really wasn't able to pick up on what was going on. And looking back now, I can kind of see where there were some red flags and things that I was doing. So be very mindful of those things that are, telling you to take care of yourself before you end up in the ER with 2 bags of fluid. Um, right? Um, Time, make space for yourself, whether it's 10 or 15 minutes a day. Find some quiet time, do something that you love, something that makes you feel good and whole. Set aside some time that's just for you. And when I say just for you, I don't mean, your significant other. I don't mean your kids. I mean, there needs to be just a little bit of space just for you to rest. Um, the last is mental health. And really, that's very broad and it can be anything that helps you. I mean, if it's therapy, it's therapy. If it's hikes in the mountains, it's hikes in the mountains. We had a peer support training recently where the gal and her family just bought a side by side, kind of like a UTV. They can go cruising in the woods. Best thing ever for her. But just doing things to regularly decompress and just take care of yourself. And I just like to end with this. This is one of my favorite quotes ever. If it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, no, all great stuff. And we've gone over that half hour, so want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we will end there, and it's also just a really good place to end. I
Yeah,
think
thank
this
you.
has been super valuable. Hopefully, everyone watching has too. We will get this episode up on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, so you'll be able to catch the replay either on the webinar site or one of those places. If you have any questions for myself or Cammie, by all means, feel free to shoot me an email, halcyon@deniseamberly.org, and I will get them to her. I also know her personally, that if you need to connect with her, use her as a resource, she's more than happy to be a support person for everyone. I will also say, if you are looking for some self-care in the sense of joy and just happiness, if she will let you, add her on Facebook, because her daughter is adorable and she just gets so excited about things. And I just can't help but like be happy anytime she posts about her daughter.
So
So
great. It is. It's
it's
fantastic.
very entertaining. And with that, I will in the chat put our next ECC Essentials will be June 1st, I believe is the date. And that will be with Sandra from Prepared. And we will be talking about 911 and video in 911. So also a good conversation. And that is all I have. Thank you so much, Cammie, for
Yes, no,
sharing
thank
your
you. I appreciate it.
insights and lessons learned. Uh, and everyone else, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks.
Thanks.